Yes, so today I will talk about a small 律诗 poem, the regulated verse which Du Fu is such a well-known master of, but which I think I have actually been slightly underrepresenting in my videos about him, which has to be compensated for, and I will do that now. This poem is interesting, I think, from a thematic standpoint. It is written to his wife, and we don't have such a lot of poems actually from the Chinese poets where they talk about their family a lot, and especially not their love for their wives and so on. And even though there's a lot that you have to read in between the lines here, we will talk about that. I think this is fairly clear that this is an expression of love and longing for his wife. So what is the situation here? It's called Yue Ye, so it's about a moonlit night. Well, that doesn't tell us very much. This is actually written in the autumn of 756. So what had happened, the Anlushan rebellion is in full swing. As many of you probably know, what happened when the rebels took over Chang'an, the imperial capital. Well, what happened was that the emperor had to abdicate, the emperor Xuanzong, and the new emperor Su Zong came to power. And at this point, Du Fu, he had put up his family in Fuzhou. This is the place name that's in the first line here, Fuzhou. This character is pronounced Fu. But then he tried to make his way to the court of the new emperor, who had then fled Chang'an because he wanted to be there and show his loyalty to the true rulers, the legitimate regime, and perhaps he also wanted to perhaps get a position now that the empire was in such a crisis. But then what happened on his way there, he was captured by rebel forces and he was taken to Chang'an. And this poem then is believed to have been written when he was held by the rebels. And we don't know exactly how he was held. I don't think he was imprisoned or anything, but he was in Chang'an and he couldn't leave because then he would probably he was prevented from leaving in any case. And he later escaped, but that's not part of the poem. Let's just read the poem. I will do it a couplet at a time as I usually do, but I won't have a separate screen for each couplet because it's such a short poem anyway. So it starts like this: 今夜福州月，闺中只独看. Yeah, as I said, Fuzhou, the moon tonight in Fuzhou, is the place where his wife and his family is. So this is a place basically straight north from Chang'an. It's in the modern geography. It's the Yan'an area, Yan'an, and so what this poem, what he's writing here is that he's imagining his wife remembering him or longing for him. So 闺中只独看, she alone. Yeah, we have to supply a pronoun, of course, in English. 闺中只独看, she alone watches from her chamber. So 闺, this is basically the real definition of this is the women's quarters. It would be her bedroom. 闺中只独看, kan, like kan is the normal pronunciation, but this is frequently a first tone pronunciation and a little bit archaic pronunciation, and it fits in here. It has to be first tone and not fourth. 闺中只独看, she alone watches from her chamber. Well, how so alone then? I mean, she's not really alone, is she? She is there and the rest of the family is also there. Well, but she is alone in her thoughts because no one really shares her thoughts. 遥怜小儿女，未解忆长安. This is a very nice and interesting line, I think. He says that he feels sad he's saddened by the thoughts of his children who are not old enough. They don't understand to remember Chang'an. So he sits in Chang'an and he says his kids don't understand that he's in Chang'an and what is going on, but his wife does, and that's why she is alone with these thoughts, basically. So his wife, and then it's in the background we have the children who are probably asleep while she's watching in the night. He goes on describing his wife in his mind. 香雾云缓湿，清辉玉臂寒. Very beautiful line. Fragrant fog, 云缓. Very sort of classic vocabulary. Coils of hair, I'm not sure. I mean, 云缓, what we should see is a cloud-like arrangement of hair. So this is a very nice, some kind of nice coiffure, which is sort of getting damp in the mist of the night, I suppose, or the exudations of the moon. And her jade white arms, this is a little bit slightly erotic. I will get back to that. Nothing really strange language-wise. 何事已虚晃，双照泪痕干. This translation is a little bit off. I don't think. To begin with, 晃 is not a window; it's a curtain. I mean, 虚晃 would be sort of, it's not, of course, literally empty, but here it's more like a sparse light curtain. And 倚 it does mean literally to lean on, but it can also mean sort of basically to be next to. And I think actually that this whole couplet should be read as one sentence, and the subject is the moon, not we. So when will the moon sort of stand before this sparse curtain and shine on both of us so that our tears, the tracks of our tears, dry up? That is when will we be together again, because he probably is in Chang'an. He looks at the moon and he imagines his wife is also looking at the moon. So now the moon is shining on them both, but they are crying. But next time when they see each other, they will not be crying. They will be they will be doing something else. But yeah, it's not spelled out really that it is the moon that is the subject here, but 照, it has to be the moon that is the subject of this verb, right? Because who else is capable of shining, right? So I think all of this has to do with the moon. Now, what is this kind of poem actually? This is what I really wanted to talk about with this, because there's nothing really difficult about the language. Well, I mean, to answer that question, we have to know what kind of poetical idiom this is. And the fact is that if you have read lots of Chinese poetry, you know that by the time of the Tang Dynasty, it is already a kind of ancient and cliched type of thing to talk about, a woman sitting alone under the moon in the night, longing for her man, This is a theme from a type of courtly poem. The woman then, usually in this type of poems, being a concubine of the emperor. So the concubine is sitting there and she is never visited by the emperor, and her life is wasted away like this, and she's longing for, she's alone and longing and surrounded by this serene environment. And what is perhaps not so very obvious in translation, or perhaps to the sensibilities of a modern reader in general, is that there is clearly, an erotic modality here. And that is what we also have to read in between these lines. And of course, it's a great poem, I think, when you start thinking about it this way, because there is this subtle tone of eroticism here. We understand from this kind of vocabulary here, like 云缓, 玉臂, these are sexy words. And 杜甫, he misses his wife, but he also desires his wife. And he knows that she desires him. And in this poem, I think it's also very beautifully intertwined, this subtle touches with I mean, talks about here, he mentions the children in the background. This eroticism is beautifully intertwined with a sense of the domestic. So his love for his family and the children, and his love for this woman, which is partly carnal and partly domestic and partly spiritual, perhaps, I don't know. We all get a little bit of a sense of this in this miniature poem, but I think it's very important to remember this, that there is actually a sexy side to Chinese poetry. Chinese poets are very, very reticent about sex, but that doesn't mean that they are not able to have these feelings, obviously, and that they are impossible to express with the proper decorum that the traditional language requires and the traditional society required. So I'm sure that readers, contemporary readers, and also classical readers of the later periods of Chinese history, they would have instinctively felt this kind of erotic modality in a poem like this, even though they're also probably, definitely, I would say, a little bit too a little bit too prudish to speak of this in their commentaries to this poem. But it's definitely there, and this is something that's very much worth listening to in the poems that we're reading from this time, and it makes us actually, I think, feel closer to them and feel that we are as much, a part of the same sort of eternal and ancient community of souls that on one plane have a very limited and sense of very limited feelings for set of feelings that are in common to all of us. I didn't express that very well, but I hope that you get my drift. I will probably talk about a few more of Du Lüsche poems in the next few videos, and so if you like this, thank you for watching. Bye bye.